Hey there, everyone. So I know that I'm about a week late to talking about this. Sorry, I was busy finishing up that uber controversial video, which went over a lot better than I initially expected it to. Anyway, so as I'm sure you've all seen by now, on May 9th, a California congressman named Brad Sherman called for the proposal of a bill to outlaw all cryptocurrency in the United States. Now, if you're a longtime viewer of this channel, you should know right off the bat why this is incredibly stupid. But if you're new, cryptocurrency cannot be effectively outlawed because it's fundamentally impossible to track transactions occurring. Since there's no owner of the network functions by every coin wallet operating as a node, sending and receiving traffic to and from storages of info known as blocks, which connect the nodes together, and with each block on the blockchain functioning as a database of information, which each signal adds new information onto and consistently updating all of the wallets forked from the network, effectively making the network autonomous and decentralized. It's very technical, and that's a beyond bare bones explanation of how this works. But the state is absolutely terrified of cryptocurrency for this very reason, which Brad Sherman touches upon in this video.
I look for colleagues to join with me in introducing a bill to outlaw cryptocurrency purchases by Americans so that we nip this in the bud, in part because not an awful lot of our international power comes from the fact that the dollar is the standard unit of international finance and transactions. Clearing through the New York Fed is critical for major oil and other transactions, and it is the announced purpose of the supporters of cryptocurrency to take that power away from us, to put us in a position where the most significant sanctions we have on Iran, for example, would become irrelevant. So whether it is to disempower our foreign policy, our tax collection enforcement, or our traditional law enforcement, the purposes of cryptocurrency, the advantage it has over sovereign currency, is solely to aid in the disempowerment of the United States and the rule of law.
I mean, I don't think I could have put it better myself, honestly. I mean, it is amazing the amount of things which this guy just admitted to about the state, and that such a stunning endorsement of cryptocurrency could be made by someone whose interests are directly challenged by its mere existence. I mean, for one thing, he outright just admitted on live TV, C-SPAN. I still am taken aback by this. He just admitted that the US dollar pretty much only has market value because of international cartels and government force, like through OPEC or the IMF, forcing other merchants of other nations and other nations' governments to trade in US dollars. Now that's not news to me. In fact, I have a whole video I did with Filthy Heretic about a year ago explaining this process, conventionally known as petrodollar recycling, but this is news for a lot of people, normie or not. He also goes on to state outright that the government can't impose restrictions on trade or tax transactions because of cryptocurrency or involving cryptocurrency, and that's a really weird logical disconnect you'll see from politicians, media pundits, or other statist shills when talking about cryptocurrency. They acknowledge that because of decentralized blockchain networks, that they aren't effectively able to tax or otherwise have government regulations over markets centered around cryptocurrencies or any other form of exchange involving encrypted ledgers. Yet they'll turn around and argue that the state can outlaw cryptocurrency and that cryptocurrency itself isn't a means of achieving political change or prosperity. The Keynesian economist kind of shills are the funniest, the kind which doesn't even pretend to be against the state and are typically used by state shills who pretend that they aren't in support of the state as a means to frame themselves as opposition to the political elite, because they make the most outrageously nonsensical and self-contradictory claims about crypto, like Joseph Stiglitz saying on Bloomberg that cryptocurrency should be outlawed because it has no value to society. Well, why do you want to outlaw it if it has no value? If it had no value, you don't have to worry about it because nothing would change on the international markets. But no, of course he knows that it does have value as a real form of money, which itself has commodity value instead of just being a fractional reserve note. That's why people like this are so fucking terrified of it, because they know cryptocurrencies will become preferred to fiat notes necessarily, and there's not a fucking thing that they can do about it. You also should watch out for the shills who pretend to buy and trade with cryptocurrency, but then will turn around and say that people need to go out and vote or support the state because the state could outlaw cryptocurrency, and that cryptocurrency itself isn't a viable means of political change or prosperity unless the state supports it. Another case of where the exact same media narrative and simulacrum is being constructed by the state, regardless of which side of the controlled political spectrum you listen to, while they pretend to be different from one another on a superficial level. I mean, China, Russia, Colombia, and many other countries have already outlawed cryptocurrency, and yet all of them, since they've outlawed their cryptocurrencies, the amount of people trading with cryptocurrency in those nations has exploded. I mean, in Russia, there are entire farming communities which exclusively trade in cryptocurrencies. And recently, in late 2018, a study was conducted by Credit Karma of 2,000 people, out of which 57% admitted to trading and experiencing gains with cryptocurrency. 0.04% of them filed their gains to the IRS. And there's really not anything the IRS could do about it, since they wouldn't even know where to start in finding the people who did obtain crypto profits. But another interesting point which you might be asking yourself then is, why do these politicians even mention crypto if it goes against their interests? Well, for one thing, up until about 2015 to 2016, the media and politicians did attempt to pretend basically that cryptocurrencies didn't exist. They saw no media coverage and grew solely on their utility and some advertising from independent websites and content creators. Despite existing since 2008 and the first white papers by Tim C. May being published and existing as far back as at least 1991. So they did try to ignore it, but of course some cryptos like Litecoin, Bitcoin, and Ethereum grew and started developing a significant presence on international markets. Now to the point where they're being utilized by some of the biggest companies in the world, such as Kroger, Starbucks, Whole Foods, or eBay, and are overtaking credit card companies. So the politicians started talking about it more, but mostly trying to spread a propaganda narrative, attempting to convince people that cryptocurrency was some form of scam, or that it's not profitable by using a bunch of economic pseudoscience. Basically, anytime cryptocurrency experienced gains, it was a bubble, and anytime it experienced losses, the currency was dead. The state and the media did this so much that someone created a lovely website called the Bitcoin Obituaries, and since about 2015, the media has said that Bitcoin has died over 500 times. So that didn't work, and they've now resorted to just fear-mongering about how Bitcoin threatens national security and how baby rapists or terrorists can trade with it, even though those groups were trading with the US dollar before cryptocurrency along and still do, and no one says or said anything about that. And this little fucking worm, Brad Sherman, actually believes that he is entitled to have political power and rule over people. That's why it honestly feels so satisfying to watch the spoiled little control freaks known as politicians crawl around kicking and screaming about counter economics and how their ability to coerce and rule over peaceful people is coming to an end. Now, I've suspected that this was the case, but I haven't had any concrete evidence to prove it for a long time. But I've only had market trends which correlate but don't necessarily imply causation. But anyway, I've suspected that politicians creating bills to outlaw cryptocurrency actually unintentionally ends up making cryptocurrency increase in demand, both because uninformed currency speculators interpret this as a signal that the currency is about to become more scarce, and therefore they could potentially make a profit by buying it, and because by trying to ban it, the state has to basically advertise implicitly or explicitly all of the points of utility which make cryptocurrency better than the US dollar or any other fiat currencies. I suspected that this was the case ever since this exact situation happened in all of the aforementioned countries where crypto was outlawed, but there was always other things happening in the crypto market at the time with those currencies which could offer an alternative explanation for why those currencies were gaining in value. Well, here, there was literally nothing else that happened last week with cryptocurrencies other than Brad Sherman proposing a ban and unwittingly advertising cryptocurrencies selling points. And as a result of what Brad Sherman did, cryptocurrency, all of the cryptocurrencies, not just Bitcoin, but Litecoin, Ethereum, Doge, even the more speculative ones like Dogecoin, they all gained in value. So not only can cryptocurrency not be adversely affected by regulations or taxes, but actually the state attempting to use force to keep it off the market ends up making it more valuable and ends up making more people trade with it. So I'm reminded of two things by this whole ordeal, other than how obviously fucked the government is and how within the next few decades for sure we'll be living in a stateless world. Firstly, how the media tried to argue that cryptocurrency required electricity to be valuable and was subsequently proven wrong by people in Venezuela trading with it by exchanging their wallet IDs and QR codes when their entire country's power grid failed. So a lack of electricity actually further incentivized people to trade with cryptocurrency, Dash specifically, because no one could access their bank accounts without power. Secondly, that quote, which is commonly misattributed to Gandhi: first they ignore you, then they mock you, then they fight you, then you win. Paraphrasing slightly, but that's exactly what the trend of behaviors with the state seems to suggest since cryptocurrency came into existence. For the first 11 years, they ignored it, and about 6 or 7 years later, they tried to pretend it wasn't relevant, so mockery. And now I think it's safe to say that we've entered pretty firmly into the third part of that statement, which is glorious because, as noted, the harder that the state attempts to fight cryptocurrency, the more influential counter economies forming around cryptocurrency will become. Anyway, thank you all for watching. If you liked my video, please comment, rate, and subscribe. And by the way, if you can't tell, yeah, I'm using my webcam. Now, why did I start using my webcam halfway through recording? Well, my good microphone broke. So, yeah, so please tell me in the comments as well if, in the meantime, before I can afford to get a new microphone, you would prefer that I keep making news videos like this every couple of days so that I can put out more content? Or would you rather I wait until I get a good microphone, which will take probably like 3 weeks to a month at this point,